really this is going into some further detail from where Ben started talking then, is that the idea of running A/B tests is fairly straightforward, as in it's fairly trivial to think about making an A/B test, challenge something, run an experiment, get the data, but actually getting trustworthy data can be quite tricky. And one of the biggest problems can be forming hypotheses. You can end up with a lot of these. There's an experiment we had early days within Skyscanner. If you build it, they will come. Everyone's probably heard a few of those. Not exactly the best hypothesis statement. And the problem that we have with this is basically, this is known in not just online experimentation, but in general as harking, hypothesizing after the results you know. And that is, if you run an experiment and you get some data, then you'll convince yourself that what you saw was true, and you're convinced that you understand what's going on. And this leads to a lot of false positives, obviously. Confirmation bias is a thing human beings carry around. So we will also, with this sort of approach, look for data to back the idea. And it's pretty easy to do that. So if you run an AA test with no difference, you can find statistical meaning in there pretty easily. And we've done that. We look after that all the time. We share some stuff on Twitter if you're following it. So it's pretty easy to do this. So the best experimenters have a very skeptical mindset on both, on results in both directions, you could say. Results that are positive and results that are negative. A skeptical mindset on what you're seeing is fundamental. Another pitfall that we see a lot is running experiments and doing A/B testing is something that we can get people on board with pretty easily, pretty quickly. But actually prioritizing data in general is tricky. Prioritizing, will I run this A/B test based on this evidence, or will I run the other one based on my own ideas? And there's an effect known as the IKEA effect, hence the picture of IKEA in the back. That is by a behavioral economist, Dan O'Reilly, that shows that if we invest time building things, we overvalue it, and we expect others to also share our opinion. So it shouldn't be a surprise to us really that when we're building up products, we're building up features, we're building up backlogs, it is tricky to remember that our ideas should always be challenged by the latest evidence in an org. So running all these experiments, how do we make sure you constantly challenge what you're working on based on the evidence that exists in the org? This is a real challenge to get at a large scale. And the third and probably most prevalent challenge is getting the stats wrong, getting the analytics of A/B tests wrong. And there's a few different levels of this. I'll touch on them. I don't have too much time before we get to look at, but please come speak to me after. But the most prevalent is definitely, was actually asked as a question just then, of run an experiment until it's significant. This is a book by the founders of Optimizely. No one from Optimizely is in here, I think. So basically this book shows the process of run an experiment until it's significant. But this process leads to a lot of false positives. This process will lead you to a lot of dud results. And the correct process is to run an experiment, power analysis, determine the metrics that you have, determine the time scale, and conclude in that effect. But being within this sort of prevalent workload is otherwise a really good piece, and experimentation shows the skill of the challenge, I guess. If professionals get this wrong, so too will everyone else. Another pitfall that leads to is an idea that if you run experiments, they will take a while for users to get used to them. So a lot of teams I'm talking to when they get started will run experiments, the metrics won't give them what they want, and they'll just say, just give us some more time. And the idea of a primacy effect is really rare for experiments to be statistically worse and switch to statistically better. So you'd be better off, assuming that isn't the case, and assuming instead how we can prove our ideas wrong. So this is our sort of philosophy for experimentation within Skyscanner. Has been adopted by Spotify and Booking to some levels, less levels, but some levels, is that we should have an idea of design like we're right, but test like we're wrong. And we shared a full piece on this, so you can please read the blog. It's a pinned tweet on the Code Voyagers Twitter account, so have a look at that. Ask me questions later when you've read it. But here's a quick summary of that, is that we want to make clear predictions. This is the format for hypothesis testing. You can see at the top. But the fundamental part is the test like we're wrong. We try to, rather than find metrics to back our ideas, we try and disprove them. If we can disprove ideas, there's a good chance our data will be robust. And we take care of that early stopping problem by setting a fixed duration. And we conduct a power analysis to determine what is the minimum size we can see. And we go from there. So one of the other big challenges is, with this approach to experiments that is prevalent in the industry, which is null hypothesis tests, we're always looking at, we run an experiment and we assume there's no impact. We assume nothing is going on. And we only accept there is causality when metrics are significant. So So it's really important for teams as they onboard, as you get started experiments, to adopt this mindset will help you jumpstart pretty quickly. And also, there's a tool linked from the blog on Code Voyager this where you can make the calculations. Other challenges we see are teams say we don't have the sample size for A/B tests, we're too small to run it. You can use these tools to calculate that and work it out and see which kind of tests you can run, how long you need to run, and what sort of effect size you can get, etc. So yeah, please check that out, and then feel free to reach out, Twitter, and wherever else, or later tonight. How's everyone for a break? It's quite hot in here, so I didn't want to get a drink or anything before we get to Lucas. I'm sensing a break. All right, let's take 5-10 minutes and come back.